again, folks. This is Miss Knappenberger and Olive's favorite tales. I lured her out with a cranberry and now she's annoyed. Her favorite book for realistic fiction? What would it be? The Rescuers. If you haven't read The Rescuers, it's kind of hard to find, but it's about little mice who help out children in need, so it's pretty darn cute. If you haven't seen the movies, those are pretty great too. So we're just kind of doing book club recommendations for the end of school because it's summertime. Summertime is the best time for reading. Grab yourself a comfy couch, a really grumpy rat friend who likes to hide in a blanket, and get to it, man. We did fantasy last time, and this time we're going to do realistic fiction. Sometimes realistic fiction, for me anyways, I stay away from realistic fiction sometimes because sometimes my life feels overwhelming as it is, and then reading realistic fiction just feels too much like my regular life. But realistic fiction can have tons of great lessons for us and can actually give us coping skills and make us feel better about our lives. So I've included a couple that I really like, and obviously there's tons of realistic fiction out there. So I've just picked a couple of my favorites. Okay, so I'm going to start with Becoming Naomi Leon by Pam Munoz Ryan. Becoming Naomi Leon is one that I read this last year because my students recommended it. I really enjoy Pam Munoz Ryan as an author. I've read several of her books. Esperanza Rising, classic. The Dreamer, about the childhood of Pablo Neruda, the famous poet. And I had a bunch of students ask for the book report in January if they could read this one, and a couple of them told me too that it was offered in Spanish. How cool is that? I love it when a book is offered in multiple languages. And I said, sure, why not? Go ahead, read it. So I decided to pick it up just a couple of weeks ago, and it was such a good book. It's about Naomi and her little brother, and they live with their grandmother. They live with their grandmother because their mom just wasn't ready to handle raising two children. So their grandmother took them over, and her brother has some medical needs that he needs extra care for, and Naomi herself is struggling to find what really sets her apart and what really makes her shine and makes her sparkle. So this whole book is about her trying to figure out what her relationship is with her mother, but also who is she as a person, what makes her tick, what makes her special, and it's just a really sweet, nice book. But it deals with some really tough issues as well, and there's lots of delicious food. There's a couple of scenes in particular where they were eating and I was gardening and I was thinking, why am I not eating right now? So I highly recommend this book. And anything by Pam Munoz Ryan. She's an excellent author. The next one I would like to recommend is A Snicker of Magic. Now this isn't super realistic. It's more what we would call magic realism. Magic realism is a type of fiction where it's mostly very realistic, but there's like little touches of magic here and there. A fella keeps coming back who never seems to age. And that's it, sort of a thing. This book is about Felicity Pickle, and her family has moved around a lot, and so she is looking for permanence in a home, and they moved to the town of Midnight Gulch, a town that used to have magic, and then a curse drove all the magic away. So she decides that she's going to try to bring back the magic to the town. But it's also about her mom trying to find her place, and Felicity trying to help her, and Felicity's a word collector, and so she's trying to, find all of these words and have the words help bring the magic back. And actually, in Becoming Naomi Leon, she's a word collector too, and as the book goes on, she starts collecting words in Spanish too, which is really cool. So this was one of those books that when I read it, I felt the tingle of magic in my fingertips the whole time I was reading it, and when I finished it, I was just left with a really warm, happy feeling. So I really, really enjoyed this book. It's by Natalie, Lloyd, and this one was another one that was recommended to me by some of my students. So thank you very much for that. If you're watching this, you probably know who you are. Miss Olive. This one was really hard to see the last time I tried to hold this up. This book is called The View from Saturday by E.L. Konigsburg. E.L. Konigsburg was a very famous children's author for many, many decades. She died recently in the last couple of years, but she wrote a lot of really, really famous books like The View from Saturday or The Mixed Up Files of Mrs. Baisley Frankweiler, another really, really great book. This book, The View from Saturday, I read in 5th grade myself. At my school, we had a book competition where you would get a list and you were allowed to, in your team, sort of divide up who read what books, and then there would be a competition where your whole team would answer reading comprehension questions about the books, and then you would win prizes and stuff like that. So I participated. It was called Battle of the Books, and I participated for several years, and this was one of the books from that list. The first time I read it, I did not like it. There were all these time jumps, and I didn't really get it, and I didn't really understand the characters, and I was kind of like, this book is not for me. But then I reread it the next year, and ever since then it's been one of my absolute favorite books. It has to do with 4 6th graders who are all kind of awkward. There's nothing crazy wrong about them or anything. They all just kind of sort of don't fit in. Nadia, Noah, Ethan, and Julian, and every single one of them has something about them that just sort of makes them different or makes them socially awkward. But their teacher, Mrs. Olinsky, sees something in each of them, and she decides to bring them all together to participate in an academic competition. But what she doesn't know is that they had already chosen each other, and she thought she chose them when really they had come together already as friends on their own and created almost like a little society for themselves. So it appeals to kids who struggle with fitting in at school, kids who, might get made fun of by other students, kids who feel different, and it really gives you reasons to be proud of yourself. That might not be, socially acceptable for all the other kids, but they're reasons that you should be proud of yourself. Like doing really well in an academic challenge, for example. I also do really recommend From the Mixed Up Files of Mrs. Baisley Frankweiler. That book is about a couple of kids who decide to run away from home and hide away in one of the big museums in New York City. And so whenever I would go to museums as a kid, still now too, but I would think to myself, okay, where would I hide? Which historical bed would I sleep in at night? How would I get around the guards? What would I eat? So E.L. Konigsburg is kind of a magical writer, I think. And then the last one for realistic fiction is a book we've read in class several times, actually, in previous years. This book is called Phoenix Rising. We did not read it this last year because we read it the year before, and I like to sort of switch off. But this is a really excellent book. I also read this in 5th or 6th grade, I believe for Battle of the Books. And this book is about a nuclear power plant meltdown in New York State, or Massachusetts, somewhere on the East Coast. And when the nuclear power plant melts down, it contaminates not only the area right around that nuclear power plant, but like hundreds of miles in each direction of the surrounding area. So there's thousands and thousands of people who are pushed out of their homes and are refugees because they can't live in that area. And everybody everywhere is frightened and nervous and angry because they're afraid. So the book centers around a girl and her grandmother who live in upstate New York outside of the contamination area, and they take in 2 refugees who are sick. So it's not only about them trying to learn how to live with the new normal, sound familiar, those of us in quarantine, but also them dealing with how the rest of the community responds to them taking in refugees. Is the rest of the community going to be hostile? Are they going to be outright angry? Are they going to understand? And the main character in particular really struggles with, well, I'm trying to do a nice thing, but what if this turns into a really bad thing? So it's a great book about trying to understand where people are coming from and what it's like to be left with nothing, just absolutely nothing. How do you continue your life with dignity? How do you help others to continue their lives with dignity when they have lost everything? So it's kind of an intense, sort of sad book, and possibly might make you cry at the end. But it's really worth it, I promise. I promise it's really worth it. Okay, so that's all I've got for realistic fiction today. Like I said, there's tons of realistic fiction out there that I didn't recommend today that is excellent. Everything Beverly Cleary writes, I love. So does Olive. She likes The Mouse and the Motorcycle the most. She's in here somewhere. Where'd you go, Bean? Where'd you go? She's in here. Oh, there she is. She just wanted to come out and say goodbye. Whoops.